So to power Ohio off of renewable energy, basically two things need to happen. You need to transform the demand and you need to transform the production. The demand is pretty easy, and you probably all almost intuitively or in some form or another understand this one already. It's going to be electric cars, and it's going to be, maybe you don't understand this one, geothermal heat pumps and air source heat pumps. So the reason for this is that when we think about energy, we basically think about it in three ways. We think about it in electricity, we think about it in transportation, and we think about it in heat. Those are the three basic ways that we use energy. Some of it goes to agriculture, but that's another conversation, and we don't really need to get into that one. Transportation, Elon Musk, he's the one that's working on this right now. We're almost there. We're almost to the point where we have affordable long-range electric cars. And once that happens, once we do that, we can shift a really big part of the demand side of energy onto a source of energy that can one day, eventually, over time, be transformed from coal and all the other, basically just coal. The coal is the main one that we need to get rid of. But anyway, so we transform the energy that charges that electric car, and the system is 100% renewable or close to it. With heat pumps, right now, basically, the way houses are heated is you have a house and you have a source of heat. And that source of heat, most of the time, is natural gas. Okay? And what natural gas does is we burn it and it creates heat. And that heat is then used to heat our house. But there's another way. There's another really, really, really effective way of doing that. And it's called a heat pump. And they're everywhere. Any refrigerator, if you've ever encountered a refrigerator, which I'm sure that you have, you have encountered a heat pump. Heat pumps have changed our world. Okay, they already have changed our world, but we need to put them in our houses. A heat pump basically compresses a gas, heats it up, and then you can the compression of that gas heats the gas, and then you can extract the heat out of that gas and use it for things. The important thing about heat pumps is they don't actually create heat. They only move it from one place to another. So a refrigerator, all a refrigerator is doing is moving heat from the inside of the refrigerator to the outside of the refrigerator. That's it, through a heat pump. And what we can do with our homes in the future is we can use electricity generated from renewables to power a heat pump that will take heat from outside and bring it inside. It's that simple. And the reason that we need heat pumps is because they run on electricity. If furnaces ran on electricity, and some of them do, that would be okay. But right now, most furnaces operate off of burning gas. So let's review. We need to make electric cars feasible, and we need to transform our furnaces from furnaces to heat pumps. Then we would have the three large areas: electricity, transportation, and heat, all of them on electricity. Once we get all of those demands onto electricity, then, or simultaneously, then we can decarbonize the electricity sector. Basically what that means is going from burning coal and burning natural gas to some extent and transforming that into basically solar and wind. Some places can use geothermal. We're already using hydroelectric power, but the two big ones in the future are basically going to be solar and wind. So that's demand. That's changing the demand side. to change the production side, it's helpful to first look at, okay, where did we start? What production are we trying to change? So in Ohio, for every megawatt hour of electricity that is produced, and the average home uses about a megawatt hour in a month. So think of this as a home's energy use for a month. 1 megawatt hour produces about 1,800 pounds of CO2. That's actually pretty high. If you compare that to straight up coal, if you're just burning coal and you generate 1 megawatt of power, it's going to be about 2,200 pounds of CO2. Okay? So, in Ohio, we're not really that great because we're basically like burning coal, like a little bit lower than burning coal right now. And if you compare that to some of the other parts of our country, if you look at Michigan, I think they're around 1,400 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour produced. If you look at California, it's 600 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour produced. And Vermont, drum roll please, it's 4 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour produced. So, in Ohio, the goal would be to get that number down. If it's at 1,800 now, our goal should be to get it down to certainly below 1,000 and hopefully near, 4. So how do we do that? Well, Ohio has several really good resources. We have offshore wind resources that are really good. We have on-land resources that are really good. And we have a whole bunch of marginally good solar. Okay? Now, I know what you're wondering. You're thinking, okay, this is great, Deke. This is great, but it's way too expensive. First of all, let me just say this right now. No, it's not. It's not too expensive. If you built a coal-fired power plant today, it would have an LCO of $120. Now, what does LCO mean? LCO, this is something that you should know. LCO means, LCOE. I didn't say that right. LCOE, levelized cost of energy. All energy projects are financed over a period of 20 to 30 years, and then the amount of energy they produce over that period gets levelized, and basically they generate a number called the LCOE, levelized cost of energy. And the LCOE for coal is about $120 per megawatt hour. Okay, that's what people think is cheap. But natural gas, the reason why natural gas has killed is entering the market and has done so well is because the LCO of natural gas is like $60. $60, half the cost of coal power. That's why coal power, if you look at charts of coal power in the United States, it's dramatically decreasing. It's falling faster than any other energy source we have, and that's because coal is expensive in comparison to natural gas. So natural gas is our cheapest. It's the benchmark at $60 per megawatt hour. But what's really exciting, in the last several years, wind is actually our next cheapest option. The average levelized cost of wind in the United States is $66 per megawatt hour. That's insane. And do you know what? That's not even subsidized. If you subsidize it, it's even cheaper than that. But I don't agree with comparing things that aren't subsidized and things that are. So $66 is unsubsidized wind resources. So that's one really cheap option. If you look at the LCOE of solar, it's going to be around $100. That's like on the level of coal, but it's still cost competitive. It's one of our options. So moving forward, we should put up a whole bunch of wind turbines until people get tired of them, and people get tired of them pretty quick. So we put up some wind turbines, and then we put up some solar panels. But we don't want to put up too many, and there's a very important reason for this. We don't want to put up so many that we start to require batteries for their operation, because batteries are expensive. Renewable energy is not expensive, but batteries are expensive. So you can install enough solar to meet the demands during the day. But if you install so much solar that it exceeds meeting the demands of the day, and you would have to store that energy and then in batteries and then use it later at night, that gets really expensive because batteries are expensive. The same with wind. If you built so much that you met the demand, but then had to even out the fluctuations, that would get really expensive. So the solution is, how do you back up solar and wind? Because they're both intermittent resources. You cannot rely on them very well, right? The wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. So you back them up with natural gas. That's a solution, not batteries. They're too expensive. But if you build a whole bunch of wind and build a whole bunch of solar and build a whole bunch of natural gas power plants, you can have a system that produces renewable energy when it can. And then when those things falter and when those things don't meet demand, you have variable generation of natural gas that can meet those demands. The important thing about all of this is all of that can be done within a reasonable amount of investment, a reasonable amount of cost, and it wouldn't really take up very much of our resources. If you were to power every car, every house, every heating unit, all of it exclusively with solar, even with the marginal resources in Ohio, it would only require 2% of our agricultural land. But we're not going to do that. We're going to have natural gas, we're going to have nuclear, we're going to have wind and solar. So we would need maybe 0.5% of our agricultural land. We would need to put up some wind turbines. The cost of electricity wouldn't actually change very much. And we could dramatically reduce a number of 1,800 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour. We could get that down to maybe 500. And we would significantly be better off for the environment. We wouldn't really pay very much more. And we would all be a lot prouder. The other thing is we would be producing most of this energy within the state, which is good for our economy. And the last point I'll add is rooftop solar is too expensive. It's if you look at the LCOE of rooftop solar, it's about $200 per megawatt hour. That's too expensive. If you were to invest, say, $100 million in whatever technologies, if you spent that on utility scale solar, filling a farm field full of solar panels, you would get twice the amount of energy as if you built solar panels on rooftops. So batteries are expensive, rooftop solar is expensive, utility scale solar is cheaper